Ladies and gentlemen, I arrived here in Germany still smelling the gunpowder from the assassination attempt. On my jacket, the suit of my burned books. In my ears, the voice of the prosecutor demanding life sentence. On my skin, the dump of the prison cell. Before my eyes stood mobs, screaming, "Hang the traitors." My heart breaks at the thought of my loved ones left behind. You can't see any of these marks because they are locked in my mind. I hide it all behind a smiling face. I'm coming from a massive earthquake. Some of us were left under the rubble. Others are still trying to claw their way out. Those who got out grieve for those who couldn't. Were we expecting it? No. We can see much more clearly now that all the clues were there. 5 years ago, we still thought we could defeat the darkness thinking over us with our light. Our intellectuals, who warned us about the approaching danger, were slaughtered one by one. Our glasses were smashed. Young people, speaking out for the sake of a park in Istanbul, were shot, mostly in the eyes. We could no longer see. You know about the boiling frog. We were boiled in a cauldron, brought up to temperature slowly, so we wouldn't leap out at once. It was too late by the time we noticed. We were being cooked. Evil lay in ambush, waiting for its hour in cage, locked by the bayonet, by the fear of sin, of shame. A black wind blew and smashed the lock. Evil was unleashed, rewarded, encouraged. The worst became the role model. Whatever was sinful or shameful until yesterday became the norm. And so began the rule of evil. The good struggled to accept it at first. Anyone who objected was banged up in the cage that wicked had left. Those who remained slumped into a corner. In 5 years, we became exiles in our own land. In fact, every dissident is a potential exile. Your exile begins the moment you challenge the mainstream. That is social belief, the framework drawn up by the state, or the generally accepted norms. You are marked as traitor the moment you say no. If you live in a part of the world with a low threshold of tolerance and a high tendency to authoritarianism, you know you have to be prepared for courts, being sidelined, slander, threats, abuse, prison, and even silence forever. A series of punishment and deep, cloying loneliness. This knowledge forces some into silence, prison, or even the cemetery. Hrant Dink, one of the last representatives of a folk who suffered the worst exile of the past century, had asked just before he was assassinated, "When did we get to plant a tree to eat its fruit?" That fruit tempts some people to give up their own ideas than their homeland. That's also hard. You can never recover yourself, and you can never recover your self-respect, even if you could go back to your country. Others leave their land that can't bear their ideas rather than abandon their ideas. Muratan Mungan squeezes the mindset of a lever into a few words, saying, it's not really the one who leaves, but the one who stays behind abundance. Another exile, Theodor Adorno, defines mental exile as not feeling at home in one's own home. Now, imagine for a moment that you have no home to go to when you leave this hall. Everything you've toiled and scrapped to save your whole life has been taken away. No longer do you have your comfy chair, your bed, your bookcase, your cat, your dog. You have to leave all behind and leap into a bottomless void. And this is the price you pay just because you choose the risk of opposition instead of the comfort of submission. Would you bow down so you don't have to pay? Our tragedy is due to this our response. We said no. Masses are enchanted by propaganda, the government propaganda. It takes courage to warn them. It's all lies. You are not flying. You are falling into the precipice. That leads to punishment, loneliness, and exile. The first thing you hear is, you don't belong here. Sadly, that's exactly the waiting for you at your destination too. And soon, you begin to believe that you're a perpetual outsider. And you come to Stefan Zweig's sentence, I belong nowhere. Last spring, I went to an exhibition on Stefan Zweig in Luxembourg. I spotted a clutter of cardboard boxes at the entrance. At first, I thought the exhibition was coming to an end. It only dawned on me later. Those boxes were the traveling trunks of an exiled writer who had been forced to pack time after time. And now they served as a display cases in an exhibition dedicated to him. Zweig concludes his memoirs as follows. I packed and got ready. Europe, our home, had suffered a destruction. Now we are truly homeless. The exile takes his old life, his censored ideas, and banned art along. The Turkish word for exile is sürgün. It also means a new shoot. Exiles might find a gentler climate where they go, one that will allow them to burgeon and bloom. But, like any uprooted plant wrenched away from its water and natural flora, whether it will ever take root again elsewhere is a mystery. Either it does and fruits, or it dries up. History is rich with examples of both. Turkey's greatest poet, Nazım Hikmet, had to leave his country after spending years in prison. He was stripped of his nationality. He died in exile, homesick. Turkey's greatest film director, Yılmaz Güney, had to leave his country after spending years in prison. He was stripped of his nationality. He died in exile, homesick. One of Turkey's most popular musicians, Ahmet Kaya, had to leave his country after being branded as a traitor. He died in exile, homesick. All three were rewarded their country now. Their poems, films, songs are everywhere. Turkey has a special talent for damning its rebellious children, burying them in other soils, and hanging heroes' medals on those far distant graves. Isn't that what happened to Thomas Mann, who was stripped of his German nationality by the Nazis? I thought of him last year when a Turkish lorry driver informed on his wife for insulting Erdogan. As Mann wrote in his desire to see the German forces lose the war, he admitted that my sons would be forced to inform on me to the SS is sufficient to explain the extent of our catastrophe. Evil is a disease that can infect your nearest and dearest. It follows you to the end of the earth, as it did Zweig. The fear of evil defeated him in that farthest place he could go. Let me return to Zweig again. He wrote the following lines 8 months before he took his own life. The swastika waves from the Eiffel Tower. The black stormtroopers parade provokingly through Napoleon's Champs-Élysées. Life is no longer worth living. I'm nearly 59. The years ahead will be dreadful. Why should I put up with all this humiliation? You can imagine just how unsettling these lines are for someone like me. Nearly 59, his belongings in cardboard boxes, watching terrified the rise of evil in his own land and across the world. Zweig's tragedy offers lessons to us today. The exile hopes to find freedom and peace where he or she goes. There'll be no clatter of guns at his or her door or threats of the police. No shackles on his or her pen, no padlock on his or her tongue. But that's not what happens. The clouds rising from the land of your work follow you and obscure the sun where you are. And sometimes it overwhelms you from the inside. One of the shackles on your feet is all that you left behind. Every courageous sentence you form pleases you, but imperils your loved ones far away. Traces of those loved ones mark the pages of the biographies of countless crushed exiles. Another padlock on the tongue is your hopes for a return. Every opposing word of dissent pushes that hope a little further away, tears you away from the land of your birth, sentence by sentence. Some mistake silence or submission to be capable of opening their gates to return. Even if they were to return, nothing will be the same. The land you return is not the land that was left, nor was the returning person the same one who went away. In short, as the bitter Turkish proverb observes, go away and you may never come back. Come back and you may never find. As for where you go, where the exile goes to is an enigma. You have no idea where to climb the top and where to sink into the mire. Your tongue is different, so you can't ask. The most painful part is setting in as you lick your fresh wounds. You have to battle with the homesickness on the one hand and a strange land in the other, as you are tossed like a fallen leaf. Alienation is inevitable and ache for the comfort of belonging. Because you are an outsider here too, just as you were in the land you are left. It's impossible to settle in. Everything feels temporary. You're unhappy because you are outside society. Shamed because you are different. Scorned because you come unwanted. And unhappiness invites depression. But the refugee has no right to be unhappy or pessimistic or fall sick. You have to bury your pain, start everything from zero in order to cope in your new land, to make a new life, fill your belly, fetch water to the fire in your own land, and find solutions to the kith and kin back home. If you stay in close contact with your homeland, you run the risk of a crash, like a driver who's constantly looking the rear view mirror. If you never look back, you flounder in the void as your roots come loose. So, like a good driver, you have to keep your eyes on the road and check what's behind all the time. That's actually quite difficult in an unfamiliar traffic. All on your own and damned at every error. Some sink into an incurable melancholy and never step outside. Some take to crime and anger. Very few remain standing in that merciless traffic. Dear friends, the 20th century virtually demolished gravity that affixes us to the earth. Humankind was thrown to the four winds like stray pearls, thumping away from the rope breaks. This terrible storm threw some of us to other lands and others into the void. This awful legacy has only grown in the 21st century. The number of displaced persons due to wars, violence or other causes has reached 65 million. Every third second, someone is forced to leave home. Half of the migrants are children. 84% in developing countries, so they are not here in rich Europe. Europe sells weapons. Those weapons are used in wars. People flee those wars and are left behind the walls. Europe slams the gates shut and secures itself. Pays people like Erdogan to set up camps in distant lands, turns a blind eye to refugees, being kept hostage there, used as bargaining chips. Migrants who made it to Europe in the meanwhile triggered a great change in the old continent. Panicking that their jobs, cities, or lifestyles are under threat, the masses flock to the wings of promises of even higher worlds. If AfD forms the government in Germany tomorrow, the migrants are likely to be sent back. But you can be sure that most of you will feel like migrants in your own country, just like us, who become exiles in our own land in Turkey. Thank you. Exile is a minefield. It could be your grave or your throne. It could bury you into silence or unleash your tongue. Breaking away from the local might push you into a void or make you universal. You might become lonelier or more crowded. You could become comrades with the victims of the new land, but there's a danger of linking arms with the rulers too. Elia Kazan, a first-generation American, spent half a century in penance for joining in the 50s witch hunt in his new land. Alexander Solzhenitsyn is remembered today as much of his searing criticism of the Gulag Archipelago as his condemnation of America for pulling out too soon from Vietnam. The Frankfurt School, on the other hand, was the bountiful fruit of the exiles from Nazi Germany. Another danger that awaits the exiled writer is turning into a political figure, compelled by the thrill and rage of having escaped the pincers, of having broken free from the chains. Politics enters your blood, makes you unable to write about anything else. Creativity isn't always whipped up by rage, but occasionally serves as shroud. The exile is locked in a battle with the axe that has severed the ties with the land, What's crucial and equally hard is to transform this battle into ideas, into art, into literature. Exiles, unable to manage it, unable to shake off vindictiveness, die as a dissident in exile. Then there are those who return only to fail to settle in. Theirs is a tragedy in its own right. Like Bruno Alfred Döblin, who, unable to find the cultural climate he sought in Germany, had to go back to France, where he had sought refuge during the war. Wasn't there a single hero's welcome? Of course there was. Let's chase away these dark clouds and take a positive look at exile. Allow me to recall Ernst Reuter at this point. The mayor of Magdeburg was arrested and sent to concentration camp in 1933 for opposing the Nazis. There he was beaten, humiliated, and tormented. In 1935, he left Germany carrying a single suitcase, a passport not as yet confiscated, and a modest amount of money in his pocket. He told his friends as he left, "We may be going into the wilderness for 10 years, but we shall return one day." He went no to wilderness. He went to Turkey, and Turkey welcomed him with open arms. And just as he had anticipated, he contributed to the build of New Turkey for 10 years. Even as he carried on, he struggled to free his own land. He created that roadmap for post-war Germany, and on his return, he became mayor of Free Berlin and participated in the resurgence of his country. Reading his story here, where I arrived carrying a single suitcase, a passport not as yet confiscated, and a modest amount of money in my pocket, gives me hope. Yes, exile is as hard as homelessness, being heimatlos, losing your parents. Yes, exile is painful, tiring, sad experience. But it also opens new doors to writers, artists, academics, intellectuals, politicians. 85 years after Reuter, academics sacked in Turkey for signing a petition for peace come to Germany. They reverse a century-old migration and invest in the futures of both Germany and their own land. Journalists, unable to defend the truth in Turkey, shout it out here. A library of works by displaced writers shows that pain feeds a profusion of creativity, and it is called Exile literature. There's no doubt that the wave of migration that stamped its mark on the globe in the past decade will give birth to a new generation of writers and exiled literature. Exilish continues to be one of the most prolific languages of writing as it pours from pens sharpened by pain. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear lecturer, Ünsal Özkay, was found repeating Adorno's "Wrong life cannot be lived rightly." When our country becomes unbearable and all objectors were imprisoned, we can do one of two things. In order to secure what we have, we can enter into dirty agreements with the land we have grown up, even though it hurts our conscience, or cover our eyes with the satin shades of indifference. Then there are those who are forced to leave their homeland, like the Jewish writer Nelly Sachs, who fled from Germany in 1940. The first thing her friends said when she arrived in Stockholm was, "From now on, language is the only thing you own." That single asset made her a Nobel laureate in 1966. Adorno condones intellectuals choosing to stay on the fence if they are caught between alienation and social worship. Writing becomes a habitat for the homeless, he says, creating a homeland out of writing, a cure for Zweig's pessimistic "I belong nowhere." Pessimism that Thomas Mann defines with his optimism. Wherever I am, there is Germany. Being a loose balloon is as risky for writers, artists, politicians, academics as it is productive. It hurts to break away from home, but it also sets your spirit free. It protects you from established norms, smothering prejudices, peer pressure, conforming to avoid danger, and the insistence fabricated to protect dictators, protection of the national interest. It gives you the opportunity to leave established motorways in order to carve your own path. And that's where you meet you didn't know until then. The tape over your mouth is gone, as are the shackles at your ankles and the blindfold over your eyes. Now you are alone, but also independent. Leaving your comfortable home to recreate yourself in a new universe is ambitious defiance. Like diving into cold water, you may shiver first, but you feel invigorated, rejuvenated, fortified, liberated. Keeping in step with and staying on your feet in every situation, refusing to fall into the stream no matter what, and carrying on your objection alone if need be everywhere and against everyone, all this reinforces your self-confidence. Exile also offers the opportunity to test your own skills and to make your language, issues, and battles heard beyond your own borders, as it gives the destination country new viewpoints. Didn't Edward Said, a Palestinian American, teach the West that fundamentalism was not the monopoly of Islam, that Christianity and Judaism also had their own versions? Let's come to Germany. Famous as the land of migrants, Germany developed with the energy of the foreigners it embraced and grew into a global giant just like America that had done the same. Its willingness to open the doors to migrants was impressive. Even though I am horrified by the rise of those who want to kick them out, I take heart from the solidarity of the demonstrators, their slogans saying, "We shall defeat hatred," surrounding those hate rallies. Just as my German friends stand shoulder to shoulder with us in Turkey's fight for freedom, I walk alongside them against racism. It's our principles that divide us now, not our countries. Our solidarity for shared principles goes beyond borders. We fight to rise whole love, not hatred, where walls are demolished, so that we can eat the fruit of the trees we had planted. It's time to accept that we live in a world of migrants. Many of us may never return to the lands of our birth, never see again the cities we were born in, the roads we'd walk, the seas we'd swim in. Our belongings will travel alongside us, packed in oversized boxes. Home will live on in the smell of gunpowder on our clothes, the soot on our jackets, the dampness on our skin, and the love of our loved ones. If you see a smiling migrant when you leave this building, think of the suffering behind that smile. Listen to their experience so that you may never have to suffer the same way. It is up to us to stand up to suffering and to defeat it. We shall carry on writing freely in our new land, in our land of literature. And to anyone who says I'm too far from Turkey, allow me take the button from Thomas Mann. Wherever I write, there is Turkey. Thank you.